The ventilation shaft above Daniel's head rattled for the third time that hour. He wiped grease from his hands and made a mental note to fix it tomorrow, though tomorrow's list was already longer than today's paycheck could handle. The docking bay repair shop smelled like fuel and burnt metal, familiar sense that meant another shift was ending. Daniel grabbed his toolkit and headed toward the exit. His boots echoed on the metal floor as he walked through the lower market district of Station Harmony 7. Overhead lights dimmed to simulate evening, though in space there was no real day or night. Vendors were packing up their stalls. A Trilaxian merchant argued with a customer about vegetable prices. Two Verkosian workers laughed at something on a datapad. He checked the time. Oliver would be waiting at the learning center. His son was probably showing off another drawing to Mrs. Patterson, talking her ear off about spaceships or dinosaurs or whatever had captured his imagination today. The thought made Daniel smile despite his exhaustion. The crowd thinned as he cut through a side passage between storage units. Most people avoided this area after dark. Too quiet, too many shadows. But it saved 10 minutes, and Daniel needed those minutes to pick up Oliver before the learning center closed. That's when he noticed everyone was giving one particular alley extra space. A Zinthri couple crossed to the opposite side of the corridor. A human woman pulled her daughter closer and hurried past. Something was wrong. Daniel slowed his pace. He should keep walking. Mind his business. Get to Oliver. But his feet stopped anyway. A sound came from the alley. Scratching. Something digging through trash. Daniel peered into the darkness and saw a waste disposal unit. Its contents spilled across the ground. Contaminated food packages. Broken containers. And something small moving among the garbage. He stepped closer. The creature froze. Even in the dim light, Daniel could see purple scales dulled by grime. Wings pressed tight against a tiny body. Golden eyes wide with terror. A dragon. A baby dragon, no bigger than a house cat, desperately trying to swallow something from a torn food wrapper that Daniel's breath caught. He'd seen dragons before in educational videos. Magnificent creatures, rare and valuable. This one looked nothing like those images. Her scales were patchy. One wing had a tear in the membrane. Her ribs showed through her sides. She was starving. "Hey there," Daniel said softly. The dragon hissed, backing into the corner. Her tail wrapped around her legs, making her look even smaller. Daniel crouched down slowly. He set his toolkit aside and reached into his jacket pocket. His lunch. He'd saved half a sandwich, planning to eat it on the way home. He unwrapped it and placed it on the ground between them. The dragon's nose twitched. Her eyes fixed on the food. She didn't move. "It's okay." Daniel kept his voice gentle. "It's clean. You can have it." Footsteps approached from behind. Daniel glanced back to see a Verkosian merchant, all four arms crossed over his chest. "You're wasting your time, human," the merchant said. "That's vermin. Pest control should have caught it weeks ago. Dragons are dangerous once they grow. Best to call the authorities now." Daniel ignored him. He pushed the sandwich closer to the dragon. "They carry diseases," the merchant continued. "And there's a bounty if you report it. 500 credits. Easy money." "She's a child," Daniel said quietly. "Look at her. She's terrified and starving." The merchant made a dismissive sound. "It's an animal. A valuable one, true, but not worth the trouble. Call it in, collect the finder's fee, move on." "No." The Verkosian stared at Daniel for a long moment, then walked away muttering about foolish humans. Daniel turned back to the dragon. She crept forward while he was distracted. Her small claws touched the edge of the sandwich. She grabbed it and retreated, watching him with those huge golden eyes. She ate like she expected the food to disappear. Fussed, desperate, Daniel's heart ached. He thought about Oliver. Safe. Federal loved. He thought about what would happen if his son was alone somewhere, cold and hungry, with no one to help. This dragon was someone's child once. Maybe her parents were dead. Maybe she'd been abandoned. Maybe she'd escaped from smugglers. The how didn't matter. What mattered was she was here, now, suffering. The dragon finished eating. She made a small sound, almost like a chirp. Her tail unwrapped slightly. Daniel slowly extended his hand, palm up, not touching her. Just offering. "I know you're scared," he said. "I know you don't understand me. But you can't stay here. It's not safe. The dragon tilted her head, studying him. Daniel thought about his tiny apartment, thought about the rules against pets, thought about how he was barely making rent as it was, thought about all the very good reasons to walk away. Then he looked into those golden eyes again and saw what he'd seen from the start. Not an animal, not vermin, not a commodity, a child. "Hey, small one," Daniel said gently. "Do you want to come home?" The dragon didn't understand the words, but something in his voice, in the way he sat patiently without grabbing or threatening, made her pause. She took one tentative step forward, then another. Daniel stayed perfectly still. She walked right up to his hand and sniffed it. Her scales were rough under his fingertips when she pressed her head against his palm. She was shaking, from cold or fear or both. Daniel carefully scooped her up. She weighed almost nothing, her wings tucked against his chest as he wrapped her in his jacket. She made that small chirping sound again, but she didn't fight. "Okay," Daniel whispered. "Let's get you somewhere warm." He stood up, cradling the bundle close. The dragon's heart beat fast against his ribs. Oliver was going to have questions. The landlord was going to be a problem. Work was already complicated enough, but none of that mattered right now. Right now, a child needed help, and Daniel Reed had never been good at walking away from that. Every corridor Daniel walked through felt twice as long with the dragon hidden in his jacket. The bundle pressed against his chest barely moved. Too weak to struggle, too scared to make noise. That worried him more than if she'd been fighting that a group of Karathi workers passed by, their attention on their conversation. Daniel kept his pace casual, normal. Just another mechanic heading home after a long shift. Nothing unusual here. His heart hammered anyway. The main lifts would be crowded this time of evening. Too many eyes. Too many questions. Daniel turned toward the maintenance corridors instead. Routes he knew from repair jobs throughout the station. These passages were dim and narrow, used mostly by service workers and ignored by everyone else. His comm device buzzed. A message from Mrs. Patterson. "Oliver's getting restless. Everything okay?" Daniel typed back with one hand. "Running late. Can you watch him for another hour?" "I'll explain later." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Sure, dear. Take your time." She knew something was up. Mrs. Patterson had that teacher sense for when things weren't quite right. But she wouldn't push. Not yet. Daniel climbed 3 levels using the service stairs. His legs burned by the top. The dragon stirred inside his jacket, making a small distressed sound. "Almost there," Daniel murmured. "Just hold on." The lower residential sector was quiet. Most people were still at work or eating dinner. Daniel reached his apartment door and pressed his palm to the lock. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, everything looked exactly as he'd left it that morning. Small living space with a worn couch. Kitchen area with dishes from breakfast still in the sink. 2 bedroom doors, one with Oliver's drawings taped to it. Home. Daniel locked the door behind him and finally let himself breathe. He carried the dragon to the bathroom, the only room small enough to keep her secure while she adjusted. He set her down gently on the floor. She immediately scrambled to the corner, pressing herself against the wall where 2 surfaces met. Her wings spread slightly, a defensive posture. Her golden eyes tracked his every movement. Daniel backed up, giving her space. He turned on the water in the tub, letting it warm up. Dragons were reptilian. They needed heat. At least, that's what he remembered from some nature documentary Oliver had watched months ago. He grabbed clean towels from the cabinet and set them within her reach. Then he filled a bowl with water and placed it near her corner. She watched, but didn't approach. "I need to go pick up my son," Daniel said quietly. "I'll be back soon. You're safe here. I promise." The dragon tilted her head at the sound of his voice. Did she understand tone, if not words? Daniel hoped, so that he closed the bathroom door gently and stood in his living room for a moment. What had he just done? Bringing a dragon home. An unregistered, illegal dragon. If anyone found out, he'd lose his job, lose his apartment, maybe worse. But leaving her in that alley wasn't an option his conscience could accept. Daniel grabbed his jacket and headed out. Mrs. Patterson's apartment was 2 floors up. She opened the door before he could knock, Oliver already bouncing at her side. "Dad, Mrs. Patterson let me help make cookies, and I drew a picture of a spaceship that has 12 engines, and sound amazing, buddy. Daniel ruffled his son's hair. Did you thank Mrs. Patterson? Thank you. Oliver hugged the elderly woman's legs. Mrs. Patterson smiled, but her eyes studied Daniel's face. Everything all right, Daniel? Yeah, just had something come up. I'll explain tomorrow. She nodded slowly. Tomorrow then. Be careful, dear. The way she said it made Daniel think she suspected more than she was letting on. But she just smiled at Oliver and shooed them toward the door. Oliver talked the entire way back to their apartment. Something about his friend's birthday party next week, and could they afford a present, and he'd seen a model spaceship kit at the market for only 30 credits. Daniel half listened, his mind on the dragon waiting in their bathroom. How was he going to explain this to an 8-year-old? They reached the apartment. Daniel opened the door, and Oliver rushed inside, heading straight for his room. Wait, Daniel said. We need to talk first. Oliver stopped, turning with that curious expression he got when he knew something interesting was about to happen. Something happened today, Daniel began. I found someone who needed help. Who? She's in the bathroom, and she's scared. So I need you to be very quiet and very gentle. Can you do that? Oliver's eyes went wide. Is it an alien? A new kind I haven't seen before. Sort of. Daniel walked to the bathroom door. Remember when we watched that documentary about dragons? The one with the big wings and the fire breath? Dragons aren't real, though. They're extinct or something. Not extinct, just rare. Daniel opened the door slowly. The dragon was still in her corner, but she moved closer to the water bowl. Her head jerked up when they entered. Oliver gasped. His hand grabbed Daniel's arm, gripping tight. But not from fear, from wonder. Dad, he whispered. Is that a real dragon? A real, actual dragon? Yes. In our bathroom? Yes. Oliver took a step forward. The dragon pressed harder against the wall, making a low hissing sound. She's scared of us, Oliver observed. She's been alone for a long time, Daniel said. She doesn't know we won't hurt her. Oliver slowly sat down on the bathroom floor, crossing his legs. What's her name? She doesn't have one yet. Can I name her? Daniel hesitated. Naming her made this real, made this permanent, made her part of their lives instead of a temporary rescue. Maybe, he said, but first we need to help her feel safe. Oliver nodded seriously. He started talking, his voice soft and steady. He told the dragon about his day at school, about the math problem he'd solved, about the drawing he'd made, about his favorite sandwich. The dragon watched him. Her breathing slowed. The defensive posture relaxed slightly. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, watching his son's natural kindness in action. Oliver had his mother's heart. Gentle, open, seeing the good in everything. After 20 minutes, the dragon took a tentative step away from the wall. Then another. She approached Oliver slowly, her nose twitching. Hold still, Daniel whispered. Oliver froze, barely breathing. The dragon sniffed his hand. Her rough tongue touched his fingers. Oliver giggled softly. She likes me, he said. Amazed, the dragon made that chirping sound again. She walked in a small circle and curled up near Oliver's leg. Not touching, but close. Her eyes were already drooping with exhaustion. I think she needs to sleep, Oliver whispered. I think you're right, Daniel agreed. Come on, let's let her rest. They backed out of the bathroom quietly. Daniel closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted himself. Can she stay? Oliver asked. Please. Daniel looked at his son's hopeful face, thought about all the complications ahead, the rules they were breaking, the risks they were taking. We'll figure it out, he said finally. Oliver hugged him tight. Thank you, Dad. That night, Daniel lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow he'd need to find food suitable for a dragon, figure out medical care, keep her hidden from the landlord, navigate a dozen impossible problems. But tonight, a child was warm and safe under his roof. Sometimes that was enough. 3 days passed like a strange dream. Daniel went to work, came home, and found himself caring for a dragon in his bathroom. The oddness of it should have worn off, but every time he opened that door, surprise hit him fresh. The dragon was stronger now. Her scales had regained some shine after several baths. The dull purple was brightening to a rich violet color. She ate the synthesized meat Daniel bought from a corner market vendor who didn't ask questions. She drank water from the bowl. She watched everything with intelligent, curious eyes. Oliver named her Pip on the second day. Because she's small, like a pip from a fruit, he explained. The dragon chirped when he said it, and the name stuck. Now Oliver sat cross-legged on the bathroom floor doing his homework while Pip watched from her corner nest. She'd stopped hiding when they entered. Progress. Dad, how do you spell accommodation? Oliver asked. ACCMODATION. Daniel replied from the doorway. He was researching dragon nutrition on his datapad, being careful not to trigger any automated searches that might alert station authorities. Dragons needed specific minerals. Calcium for bone growth. Iron for blood health. Certain proteins their bodies couldn't produce naturally. The food he'd been buying wasn't enough. Daniel did math in his head, calculating costs against his paycheck. They'd have to eat cheaper meals this month. He'd skip lunch at work. Pip's watching me write, Oliver said. I think she's interested. Daniel looked up. Sure enough, Pip had crept closer. Her golden eyes followed Oliver's pencil across the paper. Maybe she wants to learn, Oliver suggested. Maybe, Daniel agreed, though the idea seemed too hopeful. But then again, a week ago he wouldn't have believed he'd have a dragon living in his bathroom, but a knock at the door made Daniel's heart jump. He closed his datapad and walked to the entrance. The screen showed Mrs. Patterson holding a covered dish. Daniel let her in. She bustled past him toward the kitchen. I made too much dinner, she announced, which they both knew was a lie. Figured you boys could use some real food. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. You didn't have to hush. She set the dish on the counter, then turned to face him directly. Now, are you going to tell me why I heard chirping sounds through your ventilation shaft yesterday? Daniel's stomach dropped. I can explain. I'm sure you can. She crossed her arms, but her expression was more curious than angry. Is it what I think it is? Depend what you think it is. Dragon. Small one. You found her and brought her home like you're running some kind of one-man rescue operation. Daniel sighed. Something like that. Mrs. Patterson walked toward the bathroom. May I? She's still nervous around new people. I'll be gentle. She opened the door slowly. Pip immediately pressed herself into the corner, wings flaring defensively. Oliver looked up from his homework. It's okay, Pip, Oliver said. This is Mrs. Patterson. She's nice. She makes good cookies. Mrs. Patterson knelt down slowly, her old knees creaking. She didn't approach Pip, just observed from a respectful distance. Poor little thing, she murmured. Look how thin she is. Daniel, have you been feeding her properly? I'm doing my best. Dragon nutritional information isn't exactly easy to find without raising flags. Mrs. Patterson stood back up, closing the door behind her. In the kitchen, she pulled out her own datapad. My late husband was a xenobiologist, she said. I still have access to his research files. Let me look. She tapped through screens while Daniel watched nervously. After a few minutes, she nodded. Here, dragons are obligate carnivores, but they also need bone meal for calcium and kelp supplements for iodine. Without proper nutrition, her wings won't develop correctly. She transferred files to Daniel's pad. Shopping lists, feeding schedules, warning signs of malnutrition. Why are you helping? Daniel asked quietly. Mrs. Patterson looked at him over her glasses. Because you're doing the right thing. That child would have died in those streets. Now, she has a chance. That matters more than regulations. She gathered her things to leave, but paused at the door. Be careful, though. Building Super has been sniffing around. I think someone reported unusual sounds from this unit. You'll need to keep her quieter. After she left, Daniel stood in his small kitchen, feeling overwhelmed. The cost for proper food, the risk of discovery, the impossible situation he'd put his family in. Oliver appeared in the doorway. Dad? Pip did something. Daniel followed him to the bathroom. Pip was holding Oliver's pencil in her claws. On the floor, she made marks on a piece of paper. Not random scratches. Deliberate lines. Attempting to copy Oliver's letters, Daniel stared. She's trying to write. Told you she wanted to learn, Oliver said proudly. That night, after Oliver was asleep, Daniel sat on the bathroom floor. Pip was curled in her nest, but her eyes were open, watching him. You're smart, Daniel said softly. Smarter than anyone gives your species credit for. That's going to be a problem. Pip tilted her head. Because smart means sentient. Sentient means you should have rights. But galactic law doesn't recognize dragons as sentient beings. To them, you're property. Valuable property. Pip made a small questioning sound. I don't know what to do, Daniel admitted. I want to protect you, but I'm just a mechanic. I don't have money for lawyers or influence with station authorities. Pip slowly uncurled herself. She walked across the bathroom floor, each step deliberate. She stopped at Daniel's knee and looked up at him. Then she did something that broke his heart and filled it simultaneously. She climbed into his lap, curled up, and pressed her head against his chest. Trusting him completely, that Daniel's hand hovered over her back, afraid to touch, afraid to break this fragile moment. Then he gently stroked her scales. She made a soft, content sound. Okay, Daniel whispered. Okay, I'll figure this out. I promise. The next day at work, Daniel's supervisor Grell approached his workstation. The Zenthree's multiple eyes focused on Daniel's screen. You've been researching dragons on your breaks. Grell observed that Daniel's blood went cold. Just curious. Curious. Right. Grell leaned closer. You found one, didn't you? I don't know what. Reed, listen to me. Dragons are worth serious money on the mining colonies. Their size lets them access tight spaces. Their intelligence makes them trainable. Their expendability makes them profitable. If you found one, turn it in. Get the finder's fee. Move on with your life. Daniel met Grell's eyes. I didn't find anything. You're lying. Prove it. Grell studied him for a long moment. You humans, always making things complicated with your feelings. That dragon isn't a pet. It's not your friend. It's a resource. She's a child. It's a dragon. Daniel turned back to his work. I need to finish this repair. Grell walked away, but Daniel knew the conversation wasn't over. His supervisor suspected. How long before those suspicions turned into action? That evening, Daniel came home to find Oliver teaching Pip simple words. She could say home now. Sort of. It came out more like home, with extra breath sounds, but the intent was clear. Oliver pointed at Daniel. Dad. Pip looked at Daniel. Dea. Close enough. Oliver pointed at himself. Brother. Pip considered this. BR. They were family now, whether the galaxy recognized it or not. Daniel just had to figure out how to keep them that way. The announcement came through the station-wide system on a gray Tuesday morning. Daniel was fixing coffee when the speakers crackled to life. Attention all residents of lower district sectors 8 through 12. Random housing inspections will begin in 48 hours as part of ongoing contraband investigations. Thank you for your cooperation. Daniel's hand froze on the coffee pot. 48 hours. 2 days before security came through their apartment. 2 days before they found Pip. Oliver looked up from his cereal. What's contraband? Stuff people aren't supposed to have, Daniel said, trying to keep his voice normal. Don't worry about it. Finish your breakfast. But worry was all Daniel could do. At work, his hands went through familiar motions while his mind raced through options. None of them were good. Option 1. Turn Pip in before the inspection. Claim he just found her. Collect the finder's fee and pretend he'd never cradled a frightened dragon in his arms. Never heard her try to say his name. Never promised to keep her safe that he couldn't. Option 2. Keep hiding her. Hope the inspectors missed something or didn't search thoroughly. Risk everything on luck. Too dangerous. Option 3. Run. Take Oliver and Pip and leave the station. Go somewhere without records or regulations or people hunting dragons. With what money? And go where? Daniel's data pad buzzed during lunch break. A message from Mrs. Patterson with a single link and 3 words. Call this person. The link led to a profile for Rachel Kim, human legal advocate specializing in sentient rights cases. Daniel stared at the screen. Could a lawyer actually help? Or would contacting one just create an official record of his illegal dragon? He made the call anyway. What else could he do? Rachel answered on the second ring. Professional. Direct. Mrs. Patterson told me about your situation. You have a dragon in your home and security is coming. That about sum it up? Yes. How old? The dragon? Young. Maybe 4 or 5 in human years if I'm guessing right. Verbal. She's learning words. Says home, Dad, brother. Tries to write letters. Silence on the line. Then Rachel spoke again, her tone different. More interested. She's learning language? Demonstrating abstract thought. Yes. That changes things. Daniel, I need to be honest with you. What you're doing is illegal under current station law. But there's a legal gray area we might be able to exploit. Ever heard of developing sentient protection protocols? No, it's rarely used. Basically, if we can prove a species is developing sentience, they can't be classified as property during the assessment period. We'd have 90 days to gather evidence of cognitive development. And then what? Then we petition for recognition. It's a long shot, expensive, takes months of evaluations and hearings. But it would buy you time and give Pip legal protection. Daniel's throat tightened at hearing Pip's name from stranger. It made her reel to the outside world. How expensive? Rachel quoted a number that made Daniel's stomach drop. 6 months of his salary. Maybe more. I don't have that kind of money. I know, but let me worry about funding for now. First, we need to get through this inspection. I'll file an emergency petition for foster guardianship under developing sentient protections. That'll make Pip's presence in your home legal, temporarily. But there's a catch. Of course there is. They'll send assessors, a psychologist, a legal observer, probably a security officer. They'll interview Pip, evaluate the living situation. If Pip doesn't demonstrate sufficient cognitive ability, they'll reject the petition and remove her immediately. Daniel thought about Pip hiding in the bathroom when strangers approached. How she still flinched at sudden movements. How 3 days ago, she'd had a nightmare and Oliver was the only one who could calm her down. She's traumatized, Daniel said. She's been living in the streets, starving, alone. She's just starting to trust us. If strangers come in demanding she perform for them, I know. It's not fair, but it's the only option I can give you. That night, Daniel sat on the couch with Oliver beside him. Pip was curled on Oliver's lap, a position that would have been impossible a week ago. Her tail wrapped loosely around Oliver's arm. Something's going to happen tomorrow, Daniel said carefully. Some people are coming to visit. They need to talk to all of us, including Pip. What? Oliver asked. To see if Pip can stay with us. Really stay legally. Pip's head lifted at her name. She looked between them with those intelligent golden eyes. What if she gets scared? Oliver's voice was small. Then we'll be there with her. We'll help her through it. What if they take her away? Daniel pulled his son closer. I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that. Oliver was quiet for a moment. Then he looked down at Pip. You have to be brave tomorrow. Show them how smart you are. Show them you're learning and growing and you belong here with us. Pip chirped softly. She reached up with one small claw and touched Oliver's face. Gentle, careful, family, she said clearly. The word came out better than any she'd tried before. Family. Oliver's eyes filled with tears. He hugged her gently. Yeah, family. Daniel watched them and felt something break open in his chest. This was worth fighting for, worth risking everything for. The next morning, 3 people arrived at Daniel's door exactly on schedule. Dr. Amy Foster was a human woman with kind eyes and gray streaking her hair. Praxis was a Karathi, his crystalline skin refracting light in blues and greens. Lieutenant Dash looked young for security, maybe late 20s, with a careful professional expression. They entered the small apartment, and immediately the space felt crowded. Oliver stood close to Daniel. Pip was nowhere to be seen, hiding in the bathroom. This is a standard assessment, Dr. Foster explained. We'll observe the living conditions, interview both of you, and evaluate the subject's cognitive development. The process usually takes 2 to 3 hours. Her name is Pip, Oliver said firmly. Not subject. Dr. Foster smiled. You're right. I apologize. We'll evaluate Pip's cognitive development. They started with questions. How did Daniel find her? What was her daily routine? What behaviors had they observed? Daniel answered honestly, showing them the research files Mrs. Patterson had provided, the feeding schedules, the attempts at teaching basic words and letters. Praxis took notes on a datapad, his expression unreadable. Many animals can be trained to mimic sounds or copy shapes. This doesn't necessarily indicate sentience. She's not mimicking, Oliver interrupted. She understands. She asks questions. Questions require language comprehension. Praxis said. Does she demonstrate that? She points at things she doesn't know and makes questioning sounds, Daniel explained. Yesterday, she pointed at the stars through the window and chirped with a rising tone. She was asking what they were. Interesting, Dr. Foster murmured. May we see her? Daniel walked to the bathroom door. His hand hesitated on the handle. Everything depended on the next hour. He opened the door slowly. Pip was pressed in her corner, wings half spread defensively. Her eyes were wide with fear. It's okay, Daniel said softly. These people want to meet you. They won't hurt you. Pip's gaze found Oliver. Her brother nodded encouragingly. She took one small step forward, then stopped. The fear was overwhelming her. Oliver sat down on the floor. Remember what we talked about? Being brave? Showing them who you are. Pip's breathing was fast, panicked. She looked at the strangers crowding the doorway, at the data pads and equipment, at the unfamiliar faces. Then she looked at Daniel, at Oliver, at her family. She walked forward on shaking legs, stopped in front of Dr. Foster, looked up at the psychologist. Home, Pip said clearly. She pointed at the apartment, at Oliver, at Daniel. Home. Stay home. The words were simple, but the meaning was clear. The question was clear. The fear of losing what she'd found was heartbreakingly clear to Dr. Foster knelt down slowly. Hello, Pip. My name is Amy. Can you show me what you've been learning? Pip hesitated, then walked to Oliver. She picked up a piece of paper with letters written on it. The alphabet, copied in shaky but deliberate lines. She brought it back and offered it to Dr. Foster. The assessment had begun. Dr. Foster examined the paper Pip had offered. Letters marched across it in uneven rows. Some backwards, some overlapping, but clearly intentional, clearly language. Did someone trace these for her to copy? Dr. Foster asked. No, Oliver said. She watches me do homework and tries to do it too. Sometimes I help her hold the pencil right, but the letters are hers. Praxis leaned over to look. Pattern replication. Many species can do this without understanding meaning. She knows what they mean, Daniel said. Show them, Pip. Pip's tail twitched nervously. She walked to her nest and retrieved another paper. This one had drawings. A crude stick figure labeled Oliver in shaky letters. Another labeled Dad. And a third drawing, a small dragon shape labeled PIP. She pointed at each drawing, then at the corresponding person. Oliver, Dad, Pip. Dr. Foster's expression shifted. She's associating written symbols with identity. That's abstract thinking. Lieutenant Dash spoke for the first time. How long has she been here? 12 days, Daniel answered. And she's learned to read and write her name in 12 days. She's learning fast, Oliver said proudly. Yesterday, I taught her numbers. She can count to 20 now. Want to see? Pip looked at Oliver, then at the strangers. She was still afraid, but she was trying. Daniel's heart ached watching her push through terror to prove herself. Oliver held up fingers. How many, Pip? 3. He held up a different number. And this? 7. Praxis made a note on his datapad. Counting is impressive, but not definitive proof of sentience. Tool use and basic mathematics exist in many non-sentient species. What would convince you? Daniel asked, frustration bleeding into his voice. Evidence of emotional intelligence. Complex problem solving. Understanding of abstract concepts beyond immediate physical needs. Dr. Foster held up a hand. Let me try something. She pulled out a children's book from her bag. Simple pictures and text. Pip, can you sit with me for a moment? Pip glanced at Daniel. He nodded encouragingly. She slowly approached Dr. Foster and sat down, maintaining distance but accepting proximity. Doctor Foster opened the book. I'm going to read you a story. I want to see if you can tell me what happens. She read a simple tale about a lost child finding their way home. Pip watched the pictures intently, her golden eyes tracking each page. When the story ended, Dr. Foster asked, what happened to the child in the story? Pip pointed at the pictures in sequence. Lost. Scared. Alone. She touched the final image of the child reunited with family. Found. Safe. Home. And how do you think the child felt? Pip's claws touched the scared image. Sad. Like Pip was. In streets. Alone. She moved to the final image. Happy. Like Pip now. Has family. The room went silent. Pip had just demonstrated not only comprehension, but empathy. She connected her own experiences to a fictional story and understood emotional states the doctor. Foster looked at Praxis. The Karathi observer's crystalline features were unreadable, but he was studying Pip with new intensity. Remarkable, Dr. Foster murmured. She spent the next hour conducting gentle assessments, memory tests, pattern recognition, social awareness exercises. Pip stumbled through some, excelled at others, but consistently showed cognitive abilities beyond what any non-sentient creature should possess. Finally, Dr. Foster sat back. I need to speak with my colleagues privately. Daniel, Oliver, and Pip waited in the bedroom, while the three assessors talked in hushed voices in the living room. Oliver held Pip's claw. She was trembling again, exhausted from the ordeal. You did so good, Oliver whispered. They have to see how smart you are. Pip leaned against him. Stay. I hope so. Daniel couldn't hear the conversation through the wall, but he watched the clock. 10 minutes. 15. 20. Each minute felt like an hour. Finally, Dr. Foster called them back out. This is a complex case, she began. Pip demonstrates cognitive abilities consistent with a young sentient being. Language acquisition, emotional intelligence, self-awareness. Under normal circumstances, this would be sufficient for approval. Daniel's heart sank at the word, but he knew was coming. However, Praxis continued. There's a significant legal complication. Pip has no origin documentation. Without knowing her homeworld or if her species has any existing legal protections, we cannot process standard foster guardianship. What does that mean? Oliver asked. Lieutenant Dash stepped forward. It means we need to do more research. 3 months ago, a smuggling vessel was destroyed during station approach. The cargo manifest listed various exotic specimens, but everything was presumed destroyed. Based on Pip's age and condition, she likely escaped during that incident. He pulled up a file on his datapad. The ship originated from unregulated space. If Pip is from a species being trafficked, she needs protected status, not just foster care. Can you give her that protection? Daniel asked. I can approve temporary foster guardianship under special circumstances, Dr. Foster said. 90 days. During that time, Rachel Kim will work on establishing legal precedent for cross-species family bonds. Pip will need regular assessments to document her development, and you'll need to work with a trauma specialist to address her past experiences. What happens after 90 days? That depends on what we learn about her species and what precedents we can establish. But for now, Pip can stay. Oliver let out a breath he'd been holding. Pip looked confused by the conversation, but she understood the tone. Relief. Thank you, Daniel said quietly. Praxis closed his datapad. Read. I need you to understand something. My species operates on logic and law. Emotions are considered secondary to order. But watching you with Pip, watching your offspring with her, I'm seeing something my culture doesn't prioritize. What's that? Compassion across biological boundaries. You extended parental protection to a creature most species would consider vermin or property. Your young one taught her to read not because she's useful, but because she's curious. This isn't logical. It's not efficient. But I'm beginning to think it might be important. He moved toward the door, then paused. If humanity ever seeks greater representation in galactic governance, I will support it. The galaxy needs perspectives that see worth beyond utility. After they left, Daniel collapsed on the couch. The weight of the last 2 days crashed down on him. They'd passed. Barely. Temporarily. But they'd passed. Oliver brought Pip over. She climbed onto Daniel's lap hesitantly, still not entirely comfortable with him despite everything. But she was trying. They were all trying. Dad, Oliver asked, what's going to happen in 90 days? I don't know, buddy, but we'll figure it out together. Pip looked up at Daniel. Her claw touched his hand. Dad, she said clearly. Not Dea, but Dad. Progress. Yes, small one. I'm your dad, and we're going to make sure you can stay home. I promise. Outside the window, the station lights simulated evening. In 90 days, they'd face another evaluation, another decision, another fight. But tonight, their family was together. Sometimes that had to be enough. Pip curled up against Daniel's chest and made that soft chirping sound that meant she felt safe. Oliver leaned against his other side, both children trusting him completely. Daniel Reed had never imagined his life would lead here. A widower raising 2 kids, 1 human and 1 dragon, fighting bureaucracy and prejudice to keep them together. But looking at them now, he wouldn't change a thing. "Stay home," Pip murmured sleepily. "Really stay, really stay," Daniel promised, knowing he'd moved planets to make sure those words stayed true. 87 days later, Daniel stood outside the council chambers watching ships dock through the massive viewport. His hands were steady, but his mind raced. Today decided everything. Behind him, Oliver practiced words with Pip one more time. She was bigger now, proper food and care filling out her frame. Her scales gleamed healthy purple in the station lights. Her torn wing had healed completely. "What's the capital of Earth?" Oliver quizzed. "Many cities," Pip answered. Her speech had improved dramatically. "No one capital. Humans come from all places." "Good. And what's your favorite subject at Learning Center?" Pip considered this. "Art. Like to draw. And history. Want to learn about many species." 3 months had changed everything. Pip attended Learning Center with Oliver now, sitting in classes designed for young beings of various species. Her teachers reported she was curious, creative, and kind. She made friends with a Trilaxian girl named Suva and a human boy named Peter that she'd grown into the family naturally. She helped set the table for dinner. She did simple chores. She argued with Oliver over whose turn it was to pick the evening entertainment. Normal childhood things, but normal didn't mean legal. The 90-day temporary guardianship was ending. Today's hearing would determine if Pip could truly stay or if she'd be taken to a refugee facility while bureaucracy ground through years of appeals. Rachel Kim approached, carrying a data pad thick with documents. "Ready?" "No," Daniel admitted. "But let's do this anyway." They entered the council chambers together. The room was massive, designed to accommodate dozens of species. Council members sat in specialized seats arranged in a semicircle. Representatives from multiple species governments, station administration, legal observers, and in the guest seating area, a dragon Daniel had never seen before. Elderly, dignified, his scales were deep blue and scarred with age. Rachel followed his gaze. "That's Salas. He arrived yesterday from Draxus specifically for this hearing. I wasn't sure he'd make it in time." "Why is he here?" Pip's case reached Draxian government channels. They sent their elder diplomat. Rachel's expression was unreadable. "I'm not sure if that helps or hurts us." The hearing began with formal proceedings. Legal codes read aloud. Jurisdictional statements. Daniel barely listened, focused on Pip sitting between him and Oliver. She was being so brave, hands folded in her lap, but her tail twitched with nervousness. Rachel presented their case. 3 months of documented development. Test scores showing Pip's cognitive abilities matching or exceeding typical markers for her age. Testimonies from teachers. Character witnesses. Medical reports confirming proper care. She showed videos of Pip reading stories, solving math problems, creating artwork. Evidence of a child thriving in a loving home. The question before this council, Rachel concluded, is not whether dragons can be sentient. Pip proves they are. The question is whether we will recognize cross-species family bonds when they form naturally through compassion rather than through biological relationship. A Verkosian council member spoke up. "The law is clear. Dragons are not classified as sentient under Galactic Code. Individual exceptions cannot override established legislation." "Then the legislation is wrong," Rachel countered. "Laws should serve justice, not prevent it." Back and forth the arguments went. Legal precedent, galactic codes, definitions of sentience and family. Daniel listened to people debate Pip's personhood like she was a theoretical concept instead of a child sitting right there. Finally, the head counselor recognized Salas. The old dragon stood slowly, his movements deliberate with age. "I am Salas, elder speaker Draxus. I come before this council to address the matter of the young one, called Pip." Every eye in the room focused on him. "Draxus is dying," Salas said bluntly. "Our population is small. Our young are few. Traffickers steal our children faster than we can protect them. Every dragon hatchling lost is a piece of our future destroyed. When I learned a dragon child survived in this station, I came immediately. Daniel's stomach clenched. Was Salas here to take Pip home? I came prepared to argue for Pip's return to Draxus. Salas continued. To bring her home to her species, to teach her our ways, to help rebuild our world. Pip's claw gripped Daniel's hand tightly. But I have spent 2 days observing this family, watching recordings of the past 3 months, and I have learned something that changes my position. Salas walked slowly toward where Pip sat. She shrank back slightly, intimidated by an adult of her species. Young one, Salas said gently in a language Pip didn't speak. Then he switched to common tongue. Forgive me. You do not speak our language because you never had the chance to learn it. You were stolen from our world as an egg. You hatched alone in a smuggler's hold. You survived terrors no child should face. He turned to address the council. By all rights, Pip should be dead, or broken, or sold to the highest bidder who saw her as a tool. Instead, she is educated, healthy, loved, because one human chose compassion over convenience. Because a human child chose friendship over fear. Salas looked at Daniel. Reed, you gave my people's child something more valuable than legal status or cultural education. You gave her safety, home, family, things I cannot guarantee if I take her back to Draxus, where we are still struggling to protect ourselves. He reached into his robes and pulled out a document, placing it before the council. This is a formal petition from Draxus government. We request this council recognize cross-species guardianship in Pip's case. We acknowledge Daniel Reed as her legal parent under both human and Draxian law. We grant permission for Pip to remain on this station as a member of the Reed family. Shock rippled through the chamber. The Verkosian counselor who'd argued against them earlier leaned forward. Elder Salas, you're setting a precedent that could apply to other species. Other families. Good, Salas said firmly. Family's not blood. Family is choice and commitment and love. My species understands this. Perhaps it's time the galaxy did too. The council members conferred in low voices. Minutes stretched like hours. Pip leaned against Daniel, waiting. Finally, the head counselor spoke. In light of Draxian government support and the comprehensive evidence of Pip's cognitive development and family integration, this council approves permanent guardianship. Daniel Reed is recognized as legal parent to Pip of Draxus. This sets precedent for future cross-species family recognition cases. The words took a moment to register. Then Oliver whooped with joy, hugging Pip tightly. She made that chirping sound of happiness, her wings fluttering. Daniel felt tears on his face and didn't care who saw them. Thank you, he said to Salas. The old dragon nodded. Thank you for seeing her as a child when others would have seen merchandise. That takes a kind of courage my species values highly. He bent down to Pip's level. Young one, you have 2 homes now. Here with your human family. And Draxus, should you ever wish to visit. Both will welcome you. Pip looked at Daniel, then at Salas. Can I learn dragon language? Learn about Draxus? And still stay home here? Yes, Salas said gently. You can be both. Dragon and Reed. That is the gift of having 2 families. That evening, the Reed apartment felt different. Not in any physical way, but in the weight of permanence. Pip arranged her schoolwork on the table. Oliver built a model starship nearby. Daniel prepared dinner with ingredients he could finally afford, thanks to donations from the human community that had rallied behind their case. Dad, Pip asked, at school tomorrow, they want parents to come talk about their jobs. Will you come? Talk about fixing ships. It was such a normal request, such a simple childhood thing. Daniel's throat tightened. Of course I'll come. Can I tell them you're my dad? Really officially my dad? You better. It's legally official now. I've got the documents and everything. Pip grinned, showing small, sharp teeth. She went back to her homework, sounding out a difficult word with her tongue. Oliver looked up from his model. Pip, do you ever think about before? When you lived in the streets? Pip was quiet for a moment. Sometimes. Have bad dreams. Wake up scared. But then remember where I am. Remember I'm safe. Bad memories hurt less now. That's good, Oliver said. I have bad dreams too sometimes. About when Mom died. But they're getting less too. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Pip asked Oliver, "What's a sibling bond ceremony? Where'd you hear about that?" "Suva at school. She said siblings do ceremony to celebrate being brother and sister. Can we do that? Ceremony for us?" Oliver looked at Daniel. "Can we?" Daniel researched sibling bond ceremonies from a dozen cultures while they ate dinner. He found a simple human tradition of exchanging promises and planting a tree together. They decided to adapt it. The next weekend, they went to the station's biodome garden. Mrs. Patterson came. Rachel Kim came. Lieutenant Dash came. Even Salas remained on the station long enough to attend. Oliver and Pip stood facing each other. They'd written their own promises. With help from Mrs. Patterson, Oliver went first. "Pip, you're my sister. Not because we have the same blood, but because we choose each other. I promise to teach you things, help you when you're scared, and share my toys even when I don't want to." Everyone laughed at the last part. Pip spoke carefully, nervous in front of the small crowd. "Oliver, you're my brother. You taught me to read, taught me to be brave, taught me family is people who love you no matter what. I promise to be a good sister, help you with homework, and not eat your snacks without asking." More laughter. They planted a small tree together, hands on the same shovel. A growing thing, like their family. Afterwards, Salas approached Daniel privately. "I'll leave tomorrow to return to Draxus, but I will be watching Pip's progress. Someday, when she's older, I hope she'll visit our world, meet others of her kind, learn her heritage. We'll make sure she knows where she comes from," Daniel promised. "And where she belongs," Salas added, looking at Pip playing with Oliver. "Which is here, with you. You gave our people hope, Reed. You showed that our children can survive and thrive, even when everything seems lost. That matters more than you know." 3 years later, Daniel stood in the same biodome garden, watching a much larger Pip help Oliver with his science project. She was still small for a dragon, but healthy and strong. Her wings fully functional. Her intelligence sharp and curious. She attended advanced classes now, excelling in art and xenobiology. She'd started learning Draxian language through video calls with teachers on her homeworld. She made dozens of friends across multiple species, but every evening, she came home to their apartment, did her homework at the kitchen table, argued with Oliver about whose turn it was to pick entertainment, hugged Daniel goodnight before bed. Normal life. Strange and wonderful and perfectly normal. "Dad," Pip called from across the garden. "Come see what Oliver and I built." Daniel walked over to find an elaborate model of the station's ecosystems, complete with tiny figures representing different species living together. "It's for our presentation on cooperation," Oliver explained. "How different species can work together and build something better than any one species could alone." Pip pointed at a small dragon figure standing next to a human figure. "That's us. Family." Daniel looked at his children, one human and one dragon, working together on a school project like it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. "Maybe it was." "Looks perfect," Daniel said. "You two make a good team." "We know," they said in unison, then laughed. Walking home that evening, Pip's claw on one of his hands and Oliver's hand in the other, Daniel thought about that night in the alley. The frightened, starving dragon digging through garbage. The impossible choice to bring her home. One decision. One moment of compassion. And everything changed. Pip would face challenges ahead. Questions about her place in the galaxy. Decisions about where she belonged. But she'd face them with family behind her. With love supporting her. With the knowledge that she was valued for who she was, not what species she was. That was enough. That was everything. "Home," Pip said contentedly, seeing their building ahead. Yes, Daniel thought. Home indeed.